Oh God!
And then he said to me, "You can't bring your dog in here," and I was like, "Fuck off."
Oh shit!
I'm not myself, I am a broken boxer stuffed with glass and sand. This is not how health should feel. Song sung from the lungs of the elderly.
Well, I am Scott Hutchison, sitting here with Francis. Wait, Daulerio?
You said it right. That's how you say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's really bad that I've never actually said your second name, really. And we're on a rooftop in Brooklyn. We're going to talk a little bit about this incredible book that Fran got me involved in, If and When We Wake.
So how do we start this off?
Page 1.
Yeah, it doesn't have page numbers.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Did you get the emails about why it doesn't have page
No.
numbers? In the one that showed up, our copies that came in the mail, there would be like on a page that had words, there would be a number in the bottom, kind of close to the center, and on the pages that didn't have numbers, the number was just like somewhere, like it would exist like in the middle of the page or like near the top.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it does either.
Actually, you know, with the kind of layout of some of the poems, the number maybe makes it messier or something. So it's like a nice kind of. That's the whole thing about, you know, looking at these on a white page. It's not just reading. It's like there's space around it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I loved about it. Is like you've got these, like, they are, you know, there's actually one that references it, you know, meditations on vegetable gardens.
Yeah.
Which is actually, funnily enough, the first one we're coming to. But like they are meditations, I think. Like they're like pieces where I can imagine, and I think people, even, you know, having not met you, can imagine you just sitting and thinking. It's very much like that. It's like small snippets. It's small snippets of thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's how it's supposed to sound. I mean, each one of these little things kind of exists as like a flash of a memory.
Yeah.
And so that, yeah, like you're sitting back, kind of meditating on what these were like, what happened, what all these things did to you. That's kind of the purpose of the whole book.
But that's the way I think that's the way that the human brain works. Is like I don't think many people think about things in long form.
Yeah.
You have brief moments of like, or flashes where, and you know, like I think that your work like is relevant for every day, in that you find yourself looking at a tree and something about it flicks a switch in your head, and then some thought becomes clearer.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a tree. It could be a fire hydrant. It could be anything, you know. But like that's what I like about it, is like it really feels like, and part of it feels literally like a journey. Like you're just on a walk, and things are reminding you, and it's very memory based.
Yeah, I read something cool the other day that I didn't actually know. That when your brain grabs something and holds on to it, every time you pull a memory out of like the memory bank, your brain just kind of retells you the story of what you're remembering. Yeah. And so it's not, I mean, obviously some things you'll remember better than others, but every time you recall something, you're getting like a slightly different version of it depending on how your brain tells you the story. And I think that's really interesting, how people think back at their lives and think back on their experiences, and how every time they kind of reminisce on that, they get it slightly differently.
Well, yeah, and that's also part of the process of recovery from trauma or heartache, or like in here, like a death, grieving. Is like every time you think about it, it changes. Yeah. And that's how people get over stuff and move forward, you know. So I totally subscribe to that idea.
It's an interesting concept. Do you want to start? Let's talk a little bit about meditations. This was the first drawing you got to me, and I hadn't seen, like, I saw like the beard drawing, but I was really curious to see how you were gonna go with this. Right. And this thing popped up, and my wife and I were both like, "Oh my god, it's amazing!" Where did this come from?
Well, this is the crushed mouse, really. I mean, it's like First of all, this one really, I like drawing bones. So like this one really kind of seemed like a really good place to start. And one of the things that I kind of wanted to do was, because of the sparse nature of some of the poetry, I hope that the drawings could maybe contrast that.
Yeah.
And you know, they're busier, they're fuller, and yet still kind of, you know, still, I guess, is one of the things that I get from your work, is like a stillness, but to have more kind of activity. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that I got from a lot of it was that there's a delicacy often followed by something quite, maybe like a little small snippet of violence, or as though you have a quiet thought that is interrupted by something horrific. And I kind of enjoyed that. Like there's symmetry in this drawing, which is something to dwell and mull over, but there's also a dead thing, you know, so like I wanted to get that combination of beauty and horror across in the drawing, and kind of do that throughout. It was a really good starting point, because and this poem is a really good starting point for me, because like it does have that wonderful combination of, you know, calm thought and then at the end, you know, the idea of crushing a mouse beneath your foot is horrible. Like nobody wants to feel that. It's actually something that I've done before as well.
Have you really?
Yeah, like, so I was going to the refrigerator in my apartment in Glasgow, and I turned the light on, and in my natural stride, I stood on a mouse. Yeah.
Did you actually feel like the little thing?
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I unfortunately didn't kill him, so I had to then scoop him into a pizza box and crush him in a pizza box and throw it in the trash.
Jesus, that's a horrifying story.
Yeah. So this resonated.
This poem, so my granddad had this little plot of like really small backyard, and he had like a little vegetable plot that he would guard like Fort Knox, and he would sit out there with a pellet gun and just shoot anything that went near his tomatoes. Wow. And it got like, I remember, and this didn't work its way in, but I remember he had a gopher that was like eating through all of his plants, and he would take, I guess it did take it through, he would take rat poison and put it on the tip of his pinky finger and kind of jam it into a cherry tomato, and he would hide it in the garden, knowing that the guy would come in there and eat it and hoping that it would die. And I remember him saying like, don't tell anybody that I did this, because my grandmother would have flipped shit to find out he was like poisoning things in the backyard. But there was a time that he was sitting on his patio, and he just would sit in his chair and drink a Yingling Light and shoot stuff, and this mouse ran up to his foot. I guess he was so still that it ran right up to his foot, and he just crushed it. And that was that was it. I mean, because it was an invader. It would eventually make its way down to the plants.
I can see that. But
it's crazy, like in such a nice, peaceful setting, and then you just have this poor guy get smushed.
It's funny that something that he did for pleasure was taken to a kind of military extreme.
Yeah. He grew good tomatoes.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's all that matters. Yeah.
I guess.
So that being the kind of basis of the cover image as well, then, is the tomato plant. It's something that symbolizes him.
I kind of let you go wild with all the drawings. I said, here's the manuscript, do whatever you want. Great. And I think the cover was the only one where I gave you an idea for, and it was the tomato plant. This was kind of my way of working through losing my granddad, and I guess the tomato plant had always been kind of just that symbol for my whole family. Like, and it was bizarre. A couple days ago, my mom went back to their house. My grandmom still lives there, to like pick up the newspaper or something. And there was a random tomato plant growing out of their front yard.
Oh wow!
That I don't know how. I'm assuming birds picking and dropping stuff like that. But it was just weird to pull up to the house and see a thriving tomato plant with a little yellow flower popping out of the front yard. So it's cool that this is the cover, and I love the way it worked out with like the kind of the progression as it goes along. how it's really alive in the beginning.
Well, this I mean, it's also quite clear that I do love drawing bones, but like I wanted these small signifiers to recur.
Yeah.
Because that happens in your work as well, where like things, and I love that about anything when it's like self-referential and like you really feel like you're getting involved in someone else's world and head, and I have to apologize to anyone if anyone's listening in Scotland and I said tomato there, and I shouldn't be doing that.
What are you supposed to
Tomato.
say? Yeah. So wait, is that why that whole tomato thing
right,
exists? Because
exactly.
I always just thought, no, like one's wrong.
But no, it's not, because well, yeah, the American one's wrong, but like you have to say it, because otherwise you don't get or people don't understand what you're ordering. If you want it on a sandwich or something, you have to say tomato over here.
Well, yeah, they'll look at you funny
if
if you say
exactly.
tomato.
And you have to repeat yourself.
And so over there you have to say tomato.
Anyway, we're drifting. Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
But yeah, so the tomato plant on the front there. One of the things that I love about drawing is it's kind of again like a meditative, therapeutic quality to it with the way that I draw, which is like it can be quite detailed, and throughout that time, the drawing just is not just about what you visually represent. It's about the time that you spent doing it and what you were thinking during that time. It's like going for a long swim or something, where there's this. It's why I like drawing patterns as well, because you know where you are. It's like you feel safe in a pattern and you know what you're doing. And during that time, because your mind's not really being used that heavily, you can really sort through things. There's a rhythm to it, which I really love. And that's kind of why I like drawing in a detailed way.
Huh. Now, did you start out drawing like that too? Like in school, you didn't?
No, it was something that happened. I could see basically what was happening at art school when I was there. There was like this penchant for kind of quirky drawings with almost like with a punchline attached to them. And I was doing that for a little while, and it didn't feel like what I was supposed to be doing, but it was the trend at the time. And then all of a sudden, like, I think it was in my final year, and I just started doing these drawings where it was supposed to be like a representation of a version of a still life, where you actually just draw each. If you see a corner of something at one point, then you draw that corner. If you see a small spot on an orange or whatever it may be, then you draw that instead of drawing the whole thing as you see it. Like I like drawing the small details and putting those together in like a strange exploded kind of way. And that's when I finally was like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to do it. This is how I'm supposed to draw. Rather than going along with what everyone else in my class was doing. It was like this realization that, and it was a brilliant thing when it happened. I kind of had this like eureka moment where it was like, I've found the way that I'm going to do this. Yeah. Which is weird that it takes you almost my whole art school career to like figure that out. But it was great when it happened, and I've done it versions of that ever since.
Yeah, I mean the one.
How about you with like the, how your writing has developed over time?
I started out, writing song lyrics when I was in a band.
Yeah, you said.
That like looking back on them now, it's funny. I was a terrible editor. Like I still don't like to edit, and I just don't think I did then. There wasn't like a cause for it. Yeah. So like I would write, I could do like the high school thing where I could write like 3 or 4 songs in a night, and not go back and look at any of them and pitch them to the band. And we'd spent a lot of time like knocking the music down. But looking back now, it's kind of funny that I didn't edit them. And then when I got to school for poetry, I kind of had 2 really distinct styles. I wrote these like really long, preachy things that just felt like rants about stuff. Sure. And then these tiny little like 4 or 5 line poems that are in this book. And there was, I guess my first semester, one of my professors said like, listen, you got to draw a line in the sand here and pick one. And at the time, the small ones were a lot better. So I was like, all right, I won't write the long ones anymore, because I would write them and then they would be such a pain in the ass to like whittle into something good that I never felt happy with, and so I just kind of abandoned it.
It's exactly the same thing where you're like you're going against what you naturally do. Yeah. There's a fine line between pushing yourself and just being bad at something because you're not doing it the way that you're supposed to,
Yeah.
or that that makes you individual. Which is exactly the same thing that I find with drawing, where it's like you can kind of follow what drawing you feel drawing's supposed to be, or you can follow what you know is the right way for you to do it.
Yeah.
And that's where you find your actual voice, I guess.
Yeah. And it worked out well. I kind of got into this style of writing. Like, this whole book to me kind of feels like a progression. So the whole thing kind of is supposed to work together as one long story.
Yeah.
So I still got the long form.
Exactly.
It's just in really tiny chapters.
Yeah.
They're easier to contain and work with.
But you can take each one on its own, and it's like, and it provides you with, however short a thought. It's like there's space to think around these poems. Like I like that it's never quite a definitive article. It's not. It allows everyone to come in, even though this is such a, and this actually refers to, a method that I guess I employ in writing as well, where, like, of course it needs to be personal and it needs to come from you, but you need to allow people a way in.
Yeah.
And I think you do that.
Well, that's what I went for. I mean, when I started shortening them, I added, like, layering.
Yeah.
It became my obsession to try and layer in as much as I possibly could to make them like tiny little puzzles.
Yeah.
And that kind of worked off of, I think the one where that shows through the most that you illustrated is Seconds Before the Blast.
Yep.
And I think this was the second drawing that I got from you.
Yeah.
But this is one of those poems where, without the title, it almost doesn't even mean anything.
Right, exactly.
And it becomes like a layered kind of decoding, like where you have to kind of play off of that to fully get the picture out of. And then you had the way that the layout ended up. We had this poem, and then you had to turn the page to this.
But there's the blast.
Yeah, and you have to wait for it for a second, and then to turn the page, and then it pops out at you.
Yeah.
Which is a terrifying drawing.
I know.
I love it.
I know.
I love it. But it's the thing of nightmares.
I know, a little crying girl. It's I mean, the whole purpose of, I guess, one of the purposes of drawing in this way is like and it does relate to the way that I write as well. It's like you have a layer of satisfaction where it's like, oh, that's like a nicely drawn thing, and then begin to assess the whole picture, and it's like, oh shit, that's kind of horrifying in a way, and like I enjoy putting that in my writing as well, where it's like there's this melodic thing. I remember, I'll never forget one of my favorite things that anyone ever said to me about my music is like, he said it was only 2 weeks after I first started singing along that I realized what I was singing. And then it struck him that he was singing these kind of bare, raw lyrics that had a hummable melody attached to them, and the song was laid out in a very palatable way, and I actually enjoy writing like that. Like the music itself isn't super challenging, but then you find this like layer of darkness within it that is really arresting, I guess, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenging thing to do too, to work in something that is pleasant on the palate but still has substance to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard thing to do in music and writing and all kinds of art. Like, something that someone wants to look at and appreciate on the surface level and still can work their way through it and find something deep. I think that's one of the biggest differences between, pop, like top 40 music, and then the music like that you guys make that has some meat there.
Yeah,
you got to do some digging.
Yeah, and it's what I saw in the poetry as well, where it's like, if you don't want to dig, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to. Nobody's asking you to, but if you do, then it's there.
Yeah.
The layers are there, and you can. I enjoy reading and rereading because it's not a taxing thing to reread.
Which I think is one of the one of the things reasons why a lot of people are really turned off from poetry these days is there's some really hard shit out there.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that you can pick up books and you get to the end of the poem and you have no idea what you read. A couple of books I've picked up recently have indexes in the back that explain like, oh by the way, this line is supposed to mean this.
Oh no.
I mean I don't want to have to, if you have to tell me what you meant,
you haven't done your job. Yeah. It should first and foremost be an open door.
Yeah.
And and that's something that I always try and create, is like it's like a welcoming thing to it, which then it's almost like a trap. It's like once you're inside, then I'll close the door, and then you're kind of stuck inside it, and you have to, as you said, like, it's like a puzzle, and that's a thing that I've constantly got a kick out of, is like allowing people into your head and then being, shocked at what they find.
Yeah. Have you found that, like, people that you're close to, they listen to your work, and when they dig in, they're kind of like, wow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's generally, I think it's the main way that people around me know how I feel about certain things, because I don't express them in conversation that easily, and it can be a bit of a shock, especially to like a significant other, a partner. It's like I'm very bad at communication, and that's one of the reasons why I do this in the first place. I don't know how you are with that, or if this is like this is why there's an outlet. If I just don't think me putting words together in a conversation is going to be the most eloquent, succinct way of putting it. So I kind of save it, or try and get my thoughts together before expressing it.
Yeah, it's the most effective way of getting it out.
Right.
It's
not the best way to maintain relationships.
No.
At all. And I wish, I mean, I don't know if I was given the choice. It's like, hey, you can either never write a decent song again, or you can communicate effectively with people. I would struggle to know which one I would take, because one of those would see me probably having a much more pleasant and easy life, and the other one is like I can't make music again, But it would be a really tough decision for me to make, because I really wish I could, talk effectively about the way I feel.
And we wouldn't have these albums.
Well, that's it.
And I wouldn't have this book.
None of this. We wouldn't even be here. I'd be like working in a post office in Scotland. I'd probably have killed myself by now anyway.
Oh, Jesus. And not even known why.
Yeah, I know. Actually, we skipped one, which was kept out of reach, which again is like that idea of repeating a tiny detail.
Yeah, the teeth in this.
I like drawing teeth as well. I'm a real big fan of bones and teeth.
Yeah, this Meditations was actually originally the first poem.
Yeah. This one came later. I think
Yeah.
I only found it in like the third draft that you sent me.
Yeah. This one was a relatively newer one, and I wanted to make some sort of opening. I mean, there's the title poem opening, but this one just kind of welcomes you in. Like, hey, I'm going to go way back here.
Yeah.
And I'm
true.
I'm going to work through this stuff that I wasn't able to get into until now.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have I guess playing off that whole like child safety lid.
Yeah.
You guys have those on the? I don't know.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's a dumbass
No,
question.
we
No, you just have.
No,
the
we
corks.
don't care for the safety of children. It's again, there's this like there's just mentioning childhood. You kind of set a tone, and then it leaves you with a sense of discomfort again.
Yeah.
It's like, and that I'm comfortable with discomfort. I enjoy that. Like it's actually a nice way to be, and but again, it's like this. I didn't want to inflict too much on the poetry either. Like I didn't want to literally take it as something. I wanted the two to play off each other without me like giving or pulling too far away from what you originally intended. Because I was never in my mind. I was never going to be able to depict your original thought. So with that in mind, I figured the best thing to do was not to create something that was entirely my own out of this, rather than think too much about what you would have wanted, which was great because you didn't really give me that. I mean, it was the best way to collaborate, I think, where it's like, just do what you like.
It kind of hit me like a couple weeks after I sent you the first draft and had said that. It's like, I wonder if I just made that like really hard for him.
No,
I'm not giving you anything, man. Just do what you think I want.
No, exactly. I did. But at the same time, I didn't consider too much what you might want.
Yeah, which I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah. because I don't think that would be. I mean, I figured you asked me because you hoped it would add something, and then that's all I tried to do, was to add without removing anything from what you'd written.
Yeah, well, I think they came out perfectly with that. I mean, if I would have given you ideas, I would have just been building into, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I want the people that read this to see what they're seeing from the poems. And I think getting a fresh set of eyes is just as helpful for the illustrations as they were for editing.
Well,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because, like, whenever you make something, if you make anything, after you've released it and shown it to anyone, even the first person you let read a poem, it's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
You have to cut that cord, because you've done all you can in packing this thing with the imagery that you think it needs, and after that you can't tell anyone anymore. You shouldn't tell. This is why it's like kind of gross to have an index in the back of your book where you're telling people exactly what it means. It's like, what the fuck is the point then?
Yeah, why did you make this if you then had to come back and...
it's not yours anymore, and ownership is like handed over in a way. So like, and I guess you did that with me as well, you know, like you just like handed it over, and that was it.
I guess it becomes too part of the whole breakdown process. I mean, it allows someone to make it their own, because the index basically is me telling you, hey, this is what this is about.
Yeah.
Whereas I can take a Frightened Rabbit album and completely let it work with my life. And if you said, hey, this song is about this, well, shit, that's not what I thought it was anymore.
I think that is funny, because like the whole thing where people don't, and I've heard this a number of times as well, where it's like people weren't really into the band or didn't really listen to us until something happened and the timing was right, and then one of our songs came on, and like it just like a light bulb went on, and it made sense at that point. But until that time, and then it's like there's nothing I can do to make someone like what we do.
Yeah.
And it is about timing, and it's about the person's life being right to accept this thing in. And then there are, of course, people who just like generally hate us, and that's fine. And they never are going to like us, and I don't really care. It's like leaving. So I really enjoy, like, whenever I was at art school, like I never like going along to, if there was an opening that one of my pieces was in, I hated going to them, because I like the idea of, like, it's like leaving a little time bomb somewhere, and then you're not present for the explosion. You're just like, I'm not there to witness when anyone hears our songs for the first time, and I don't want to be there. It's not about me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's another thing I was gonna say was like how I guess it took about a year since the first drawing to the last or something, maybe even more.
Yeah, probably a little bit about that, I guess.
And although that was partly because of my own schedule being like kind of busy, I also enjoyed the fact that I was able to have that time, because it was clear that this book was also like a good chunk of your time.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the fact that like my own process kind of mirrored yours, and that I was coming back to it whenever I could, and that was and my reflections on it were different again.
Yeah.
You know, so. Yeah, even though it was maybe not ideal for you, although it wasn't too bad. You were kind of working away whilst then doing other drafts whilst I was doing this. So
no, there wasn't really a
time
time where I was like, God damn it, let's go, get it done, man.
Yeah,
they came along fine. I think the whole process, and the press was good about letting us take our time too.
Well, it's your first book as well, so it's like so, you know, pressure's on for the next one.
Oh,
you know,
God.
if you don't sell. No, it's a nice way. It's a nice way to work. Like I guess the same thing with the first two records, where you have all this time to write these songs, and then it's weird when it becomes. Which is why I'm glad to be able to do more drawing now, because like music has become like half business, half pleasure for me now, and it's like inescapable. And this is all pleasure. Which is great.
That's good. I'm glad I could give you a little release.
You did.
Yes, you want to talk about cognitive dissonance?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like it's a very small, silent moment, which this one, I guess, is quite literal.
Yeah. The poem is too.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't seem like there was any point in taking it somewhere else.
Yeah.
this is what I guess it's what I saw when I read it, and I mean, going into it again, just like I love drawing wood grain because for the same reason, because it's like it's the pattern and it takes a long time, and yeah, it's very there's a therapy behind this drawing, and but yeah, I wanted it to be, you know, quiet, because it was such a, like, I mean, you're, with so little, like, you're totally in this basement, like you can, and it's like everyone thinks they might see or hear a ghost when they go to a dark basement.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of comfort with, but not entirely, you know, like there's comfort to thinking about this person, but he's not there.
Yeah.
And then there's no, like, it's comforting and creepy.
Yeah, I was happy that you did this one. This was one of the first poems that I wrote that I felt really good about.
Yeah.
Like, it only took a couple minutes to write, and the editing
Right.
was quick, and then it felt done. And I think this was the one that I sent you when I was asking you to do this.
Yeah.
I think this was one of the first poems I had published in a magazine. And so when I sent, like, manuscripts out to, like, editors and things to try and get, this would be the one that I sent. And so this was like the
Right.
go-to. And so I was happy that you did it, and I was really happy with how it came out. Because it feels very basement-ish.
Yeah. I don't know if I got the glasses right. If those are the kind of glasses.
I mean, they're generic glasses.
They're just
That's how it is.
glasses, yeah.
Nobody's thinking about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. I don't buy the glasses. We can jump a little bit to ground rules.
Yeah.
Part 2.
One of your long ones.
Yeah.
It's so
this is
difficult
like the
to get
longest.
through. Yeah. Again, it's so packed. I think this one's really lent itself to, like, that kind of idea of there being space around something that is a kind of explosive. It's also one of the more angry ones, I guess.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed doing a good representation of a brain coupled with this sort of, I guess I'd call that an aneurysm in there, you know, where all these thoughts compile and cause damage, and that's where all the action is, and then around that's just like spongy flesh.
Yeah, brain matter.
Yeah, which does not, most of which does nothing in a way. So, like, but yeah, again, it's like the process was as important as anything. Finding a picture of a brain that I wanted to draw, trying to get that as right as I could, and then coupling that with something more expressive. Like I enjoyed that process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that anger.
Yeah.
Part 2 is definitely an angry section. I guess part 1 is kind of almost like the setup. Like, hey, this is the troubling thing that's happened.
Yeah.
Part 2 is kind of like the angry stage.
There's damage in part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like you start cursing and stuff, so, which I like. You know, and just the you know, it's a polemic in a way at the start, and then at the end, then it just drifts off into nature again. And that way that you're like, you're constantly conscious of nature throughout this, and that being, I don't know if this is where I get, it's like that being where you escape.
Yeah.
But it also helps you to process things.
Yeah, it's a slower, quiet place.
Yeah.
Where there isn't.
Well,
million
none of
things
these
going
things.
on.
Yeah.
This isn't there.
I think anyone could associate with the idea of that escape, no matter what you're necessarily trying to escape from. There's a simplicity to that which is very comforting.
Yeah, and I tried to do. I mean, this is one of the poems. I guess part 2 on becomes a little less specific.
Yeah.
I guess if you had a hard time kind of identifying with part 1, which I hope people don't, but if they did, part 2 might kind of bring them out of that. And I guess it got more specific as the poem goes along, but it starts out, I think, with all the shit that people don't really like talking about anyway. Like,
Right.
You're never supposed to talk about politics. You're never supposed to talk about religion.
Yeah.
You can't seem to get away from talking about wars and budgets and deficits.
Well, in a way, you managed to talk about it without talking
yeah,
about
without saying it. But I guess as it gets further down, and they might be specifics that only I realize, that talking about like cancers and aneurysms and things like that
Yeah.
are specifics that I'm honing in on, but I don't know that people will necessarily see that as, oh, well, now we're getting back to the plot.
No, exactly, and yet it is nice. It is nice to have like a longer form in there as well.
Yeah,
you know,
break it up a little bit.
Yeah, this was one of the later ones, I think.
I think it was. Yeah. This was one of the last ones, I think.
Yeah. It does like bring about a shift in tone.
Yeah.
In the book, which I think is great.
Yeah, but I think, speaking of the anger, if you jump to amendment, which is the next drawing in the book, this is probably the angriest poem in here. It's the one about underwriters and things like that.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't put this one in there. Originally there was Self-Help Part 1 and Self-Help Part 2.
Right.
And this was Self-Help Part 2. And it was just a rant. I had just bought a house with my wife, and we had a really hard time going back and forth with banks. And I was just pissed. And I wrote this poem about that, and it eventually had to turn into this because it seemed like some angry Facebook rant that you would see and scroll past. Like, man, what's this guy's problem?
Actually, it's funny that you should like. Yeah, these are very much like forms for the modern age, Fran. Where for the short attention span.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that.
Oh, I'm a big ADD guy.
Yeah, right.
I can't focus on stuff, and so I think if I tried too hard, these wouldn't make any sense.
Well, you could have put them. I mean, I guess it's like it could have been compiled into something longer, but because I never really found that I never really found myself taking it in order. Like, I enjoyed getting these little snippets, and it makes sense no matter what. Anyway, I know it's probably horrible for you to hear. Because
no, it's like, not at all. Actually, it's great to hear.
And it's one of those things where like it is maybe it is like looking down through a very poetic Facebook profile.
Well, like, it's good to hear. I didn't write these in order.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you know, because you got them all.
Yeah.
So it was more about piecing them together in order, which was such pain. I don't know. Do you guys have a hard time when you're finished like with 12 songs, putting them in order? Is that because I sat down on the floor of my classroom where I teach with 60 or 70 pages and just spread everything out.
Yeah.
And it took me hours to put them in order for the first of the 30 times that I ordered them.
Well, so I guess the frustrating thing is that, I'm aware of it, is that I would say 80% of the listening population doesn't listen to records in order anymore.
Yeah.
So we could spend weeks doing that, and it wouldn't make a bit of difference. So it doesn't. I like it. There's stories in there, and there's a chronology to what I'm writing about, because it almost always involves my own life.
Yeah.
So it would make no sense for one thought to come before the other. But at the same time, they have to be individuals, and simply because of the way that people listen now, and goddamn shuffle.
I know, man. I hate that shit. That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess I guess I would consider myself like a brat music snob. Like, I need to listen to it in its entirety. You get it in the mail, and you tell everybody to leave you alone, and you turn your phone off, and you sit down, and you take it in. Like, that's, and a lot of albums are. It's a shame that the 80% don't, because they're structured that way. Like, there's a flow. There's
a lot of,
and even like the little background sounds that like carry forward throughout like a whole. It's all just lost. It's all lost. Nobody cares.
They don't, and it's like I have to accept that. But no, we still put thought into it. It has the potential to be a journey if you want it to be.
Yeah, if you let it.
Yeah, but again, it's like not for me to say. I'm not gonna tell someone how to listen. I can't. Yeah. You can't do that, and so I also try and make sure that there's a story within itself, and that there's a. I do have a. I mean, slightly OCD mind in that I need to tie. The whole point of writing these things is to tie off thoughts. Make them neat when they're an absolute mess. In reality, the things are messy, and I can. And again, this kind of form really appeals to me because it is making chaos seem quite thoughtful and neat, and I enjoy that about songs where like it's a short form. I have this structure in which to say what I need to say, and then by the end of it, the thought should be complete. That's the idea, is that you'd almost hear the difference in my attitude towards that thing between the start and the end of the song has changed, because I've gone through the process of writing it and figuring out exactly how I feel about this thing, and so from that standpoint, the ordering of an album is important to me, not important to everyone else, and I have to understand that an individual song should tell a story within itself. Yeah,
I guess that's the best way to go at it too. Like knowing that I'm gonna write this as an album because it pushes you to be innovative in the way you make it work, but also recognizing that people aren't going to listen to it that way forces you to be innovative in the way you make the little pieces work alone. So I guess that's good. I mean, I'd like to think that people can read this and just read a poem and then walk away from it and not like they're reading a chapter from a book. And I read chapter 7 without reading the first 6, and I have no idea what's happening.
I think that it definitely lends itself to that, simply because, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I enjoy reading poetry is I don't have a great attention span. I'm also quite a slow reader, so it's like these allow me to read for short periods of time and still feel like I'm getting a lot of information.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of information in this stuff, but it's just a case of like, what am I in the mood to read through it, or and like, assess what's going on here? But you don't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take it in short bursts.
Yeah. Next up is my favorite one.
Is this your favorite? I was actually going to ask you that. I wasn't sure which one was.
Well,
was
it's got a punchline. It's like I enjoy that. You can pull people in with make people think they know where something's going, and then at the very end, like, slap them in the face with something that they weren't expecting. And this is that. It has a curse word. It's like it's got everything.
It was made for you.
Yeah. No, it's so great, and just ending it on that's in itself, that is not a poetic line.
No, we talked about cutting this and editing. No, I was so happy that we didn't.
Oh, it's the best. It's like, it's not poetic, and that's why it is. Yeah. You can't have. I think one of the worst things anyone can do is somehow, like, purely for ego reasons, is inflict their own intelligence on you. It's like, look how smart I am. It's like, no, you don't have to. How do you talk to people every day? You have to, like, include that, because by ignoring that, then you're ignoring, like, a huge part of your way of communicating. And this is the kind of thing that appeals to me, where it's like, yes, be poetic and be smart with what you write, but, like, to have something real in there as well.
To connect. It lets people connect. It doesn't feel like you're trying to show off or be pretentious.
That's it. Yeah. No, and it's not showy. It doesn't, you don't inflict too much of, like, your obvious skill on the reader.
I just really wanted it to feel like a real moment. Like, this is real emotion. Like, this is the feeling.
That feels like it does. It feels like you get to the end and you yourself went, fuck it.
Yeah.
And I'd also great that it's in italics as well.
Yeah, I wanted it to be obviously like a spoken out loud thought.
But the layout of some of them is important.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time with spacing, and I don't get into, like, there's people that have stuff all over pages, and it's really cool. I don't do it just because I don't think I need to.
No.
But
it does need
to single things out, and
right. And that's why that's like the other thing. I had to stop myself from. I decided early on, like these drawings should be able to be centered and have space around them.
Yeah.
Just from looking at the poems, like, visually, like, not even reading them, visually, these things had to sit comfortably on the page next to what you'd done. And I don't do it as much now, but I remember my mum telling me like I used to, and it's the same in music. It's like I used to draw all the way to the edge of the page. Whatever piece of paper I was working on, I would go right to the edge, all the edges, fill up the whole page. And I used to do that. I used to do that with music as well, where it's like I pile a lot of kind of sonic layers on anything, on any one song. It would be like too much for that song to handle, and it was that same part of me that likes drawing to the edge of the page that was it was inflicting that on my music, and I was really conscious to leave that space with it, just because I like white. What the white space looks good. It's a place for your eye to go, and for you to. It's a space for you to think.
Yeah, it lets you focus.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's my favorite one. If anyone's not read it yet, go straight to page. Oh, never mind.
Page or whatever page this is. All right, do you want to jump to? I guess that's the end of part 2.
Yep.
With respect to illustrations, we can jump to part 3.
Yeah, there.
This is one of my favorites. Homesick. I love that drawing of that bird.
Yeah.
So with the U,
Makes it Scottish.
that's what. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's like a Scottish. Is it a term of endearment for a
bird.
girlfriend?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I would never refer to my girlfriend as my bird, but it's it's done.
Because of the level of because you'd sound like an asshole, or because it's.
I mean, it's like calling someone the wife.
Okay.
Which I wouldn't do either. But I just thought it was just like a little joke, because like you're in Scotland there, and when was that?
I guess that was 2 summers ago now.
Right.
I went when I was in school, we had a residency at the University of Edinburgh for like 9 days.
Yeah.
And I got there, it was weird. These poems aren't in order. The On Traveling Abroad poems aren't in order.
Right,
It made me look like a weirdo to put them in order. I got there a day before everybody else just because of flights. So I was all alone.
Yeah.
And I had like no data on my phone because it's expensive.
Yeah, of course.
So I just like spent the day wandering.
Yeah.
And the day one, I had this weird feeling like, oh man, I need to go home.
Oh, no.
And it just because I had like never been that far away before. This was kind of like a weird experience for me. I loved it. But yeah, these poems all happened in almost like one day, I think, for the most part. And there were like 9 or 10 of them.
In that day you were...
In that day, a lot of these were written.
Yeah.
Of me just kind of sitting there. I sat in this park. I'm sure you know where it is. I couldn't tell you where it was. But it was in like downtown Edinburgh.
Right.
And I sat there for like 2 hours with like a cup of coffee, and I just hung out and like kind of kicked back and let myself adapt.
Yeah.
And it was cool, and I got a lot of work done. I got a lot of writing done.
Yeah.
But I had to go back and reorder them to make them look normal.
Okay.
Like no one, day 8 is when you get homesick, not day 1. But I have a lot of people who've told me they love this drawing. This was like a personal favorite for a lot of people.
Oh, that's great.
Where do the organs come from? Because there was a thing with the mouse too.
Yeah.
It's like a set of lungs.
I just like body parts. I've used them in both artwork and lyrical imagery from day one. It's just like I find the idea initially being like anything you feel is like physical, and I think to remove this is going further into it maybe than I need to, but like to remove the physical nature of these supposed emotional feelings is wrong. When you're heartbroken, you're sick. You're essentially sick, like as you would be with a cold. It just takes a little longer to get well again, and it's something that I've always liked to tie in is like the physical nature of more. It just helps to understand that this is all human. Like this is not like floating in the air. Like you can take it back to it feeling something in your chest and having back pain because you're sad. Like all these things manifest themselves in a very physical way, and I love using. I just think they look. I mean, luckily they look great. I'm very aware of my physical state and how the way that the relationships that I have, the general happiness like affects that physical state. Like I've always been aware of that, and it's happened to me again and again, where you think you're sick but you're actually not, like having severe anxiety, where it's like that's a brain function that debilitates you in every way. And yeah, again, that's further than I need to go into a drawing of a bird, but,
But
it's still, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the kind of the phantom pain.
Yeah.
The brain letting you know something's wrong.
Well, it's funny. Like I met a guy who's like writing a movie about the main character has back pain, and he was talking about how he also had back pain, and he went to a bunch of doctors, and one doctor told him that it was actually like almost like suppressed anger was what was causing his pain. And as soon as he realized that that's what it was, he was able to kind of heal himself. There was like a book all about this, and that totally resonated with me. Where it's like your brain does weird things to you, and it's like it's not just about getting a headache from overthinking things. It's like about getting an ache in your knee or your back from emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
Like I kind of totally subscribe to that physical nature of hurt. I mean, the word hurt itself, it's like you're not, you may not be hurting as in you've broken a bone, but it can feel that way.
Yeah. So I feel like sometimes it feels worse. Because in a
so.
lot of ways, that's on you. If you break a bone, you can get it fixed. But if there's something wrong with your knee because your brain is freaking out, it's just kind of on you. Like, you got to get your shit together. Otherwise,
you do, yeah.
It's literally you are the person that can fix yourself. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
It is, because you don't know how long it's going to last either. As you go through life, I guess you understand that it's not going to be there forever. But, but yeah, you're right. It's entirely on yourself.
And in the moment, it feels like it's never going away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so as far as using a heart, there is just like to make the bird look better in a way, but also to just I guess it just takes things back to a certain level.
Yeah.
Where it's like everything is physical. Feeling a loss from being far away from home is like physical, and it hurts. And so yeah.
Well, it's an interesting drawing, and I think a lot of the description will really make it.
Yeah.
Pulls a lot more out.
Let me go into more birds.
Yeah, I remember it was funny. I remember us talking about like the congregating patterns of robins, because there's so many of them here. And I remember you asking me on an email, like, do robins, do they do that? Are there like that many in a group?
Well, I realized they're different birds from what we call robins.
Oh, really?
A robin actually would look more like the bird. I think that's like a blue tit or something. But they're smaller. They still have the red chest, right?
Yeah.
But they're smaller, and you would never see them in groups in the UK. Like they're lone birds.
Yeah, ours are totally different. They're a little bigger. They kind of look plump, and they're everywhere.
I've seen them since. Yeah. But I didn't know about this difference. So like, when I asked you, it must have sounded like I was stupid.
No, it's kind of cool.
I've never seen more than one robin before, ever. In Scotland, like, and they're like a winter bird. They kind of represent like that changing season.
I think they're kind of the opposite for us.
Right.
I feel like robins are like spring. Like, oh, there's the first robin.
Oh, wow. So yeah, they do gather here.
Yeah, they gather.
Okay.
Oh, they gather. They're all over my yard. Yeah, this was cool, because I think this was a perfect example of how the picture doesn't look anything like what I saw in my head.
Right.
But it adds a really good layer. I lived in a townhouse when I wrote this, and we had to walk the dog all the time, which was a huge pain in the ass. You'd like rain, shine, the thing had to pee, and so you'd take her out, and it almost sometimes I felt like they were yelling at you, like mocking you for having to walk through the rain. They just like sit there, 30 of them in a tree, and bark at you.
Right.
And it reminded me of like
Leah's your dog?
No, Leah's the wife.
Okay, right.
Leah's the wife.
The bird.
Leah's the bird. But you would almost feel like they were mocking you for having to walk through the rain.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of like the really stereotypical like construction worker like whistling it walking down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is there's not a lot in this one. This is kind of it almost is like a bridge poem, just kind of like a calming down poem, but I don't know.
Right. I mean, the same thing applies. I've said it before about the drawing of this is about the the pattern.
Yeah, this looks like it took you forever.
It's like it took a while. Yeah. There's like layers of scaffold there. It was like I started off drawing from something and then just kind of took it wherever I kind of felt like it, because I do love drawing these parallel lines and then building up something within that's really, really dense, like patterns within patterns. So again, doing this is like it's a process of meditation in a way. So I love doing this drawing. It was like that was maybe like the second one, I think.
Yeah, this was pretty early on.
Sorry, it's not raining.
No, it doesn't have to be raining.
Yeah.
We had to do it all the time. The dog always had to pee. We're getting kind of close. The next is...
Oh, yeah. Same thing again.
This is Jesus, parallel lines. I wanted to know when I got this, how long this took you to do this one for Her Body is Oxygen.
It was a half a day for sure. Like so the idea being that I started at the top with a waved line, and then it's like the process of slowly that wave calming down into a straight line.
Yeah.
And so this is the most literal representation of what I get from drawing, where it's like things start off a little rockier, and then just slowly you get to this nice, peaceful, straight line.
That ends with good night.
Place. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. You're at peace.
Yeah, this is a lovely poem. It's like, I find it. I don't know how you feel about being, slushy as it may be. Like, I kind of loving sentiment, which can feel very icky.
Yeah.
You don't do it a lot, so there's like one or two or three in here where it's like you do it. I mean, you do it well, but it's like I don't know how comfortable you are with it, because I'm not.
I mean, the whole idea of like writing happy love poems is hard.
It is.
I have a really hard time with it. And so I don't do it a lot. I want to do. I guess it's one of those things like I know how I feel in that area, so I don't need to explore it. Like it's very simple for me. But
it can seem like and to taken from my perspective as in an album, maybe sometimes I almost feel obliged, because it can seem to the listener that everything in my life is in turmoil. I just don't I don't put the things that I feel good about in there. So there's like everything in between is great. Yeah,
it's one of those, like, they tell you not to question a good thing. So if you're going to write about it, they're forcing you to explore it. I don't need to explore it.
No,
it's fine.
Well, the thing that this does is like it writes about a particular moment, and that's great. But rather than like trying to tackle love as a thing, I also don't really think it warrants being put into those kind of simple terms.
Yeah,
it's not really possible. If you know how you feel about that, then why you're not trying to work it out?
Yeah, I don't need to. The rest of this is working out things that I needed to understand. I don't need to understand that. So, yeah, I guess I do have a harder time writing happy, nice poems.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Stay miserable, Fran.
Otherwise, I'm not going to have to write about. I got to have something else bad happen. God, I hope I didn't just jinx myself there. And the last one, postscript.
Yeah, a little wave goodbye there.
Yeah.
It was it? I think it was the last one I did as well.
I think it was. I feel like I remember driving home the night that I got the bird. Yeah. And I think postscript in the same email.
Yeah, I think that was the end of it, and it was like a nice place to finish, obviously for obvious reasons, but also just like this. There's this feeling of like I enjoy that idea of burning what's gone before, that kind of thing. And then I don't know if that's what you intended, but like I get this sense of like I don't know what order you. I don't want to know actually whether you wrote this last or anything, but it's a wonderful place to end, because it's like there's a really therapeutic like the kind of purge of it of writing. And
I mean, I tried really hard. I don't like. One of my issues when I wrote the longer poems is I kind of felt like I was telling people things, like telling you how to do this, and I think this is wrong, and this is what we should be doing. I didn't like it, and I think this is the only poem in the book where I still kind of do that. And it kind of felt like at the end of the day, like when we go through all this hardship and we go through all the turmoil of life, we have to remember, like, that we only get a shot at this. This is it.
Yeah.
And if you go through it miserable, you went through it miserable.
Yeah.
And if you don't, if you try and slow down and look around and take things in, even if they're small and simple, like, it can make for a pretty cool existence.
Yeah.
And so I wanted that message to come through because a lot of the book is so sad. That I'm okay with.
Yeah.
But I didn't want it to end on a sad note. I wanted there to be some hope. Because I'd like to think of this book as almost like the stages of grief. Like
It
at
is,
the end,
it
you've
is, yeah.
accepted things and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted it to be like a little like, hey, P.S. Don't.
It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna get better.
Yeah. That's a really important thing to build into it because, like, and it's something that I've done for years with almost every song, every miserable song that I've written is like and it's a very, like, people ask what the kind, and maybe it's not exclusively Scottish, but I think there's hey, it's all fucked, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes. Like, there needs to be that, like, upturn at the end of things where you do offer, like, a small sliver of light.
Yeah,
you know?
give people something to hang on to, so they're still there for the next album.
Well, exactly, yeah, and then you need sometimes it's hope is kind of all you have.
Yeah.
Right? So all anyone has. So I enjoy, like, that. Yeah, it gives you greater, like, freedom to be as dark as you please within the rest of the work.
Yeah, because you can dig out a little bit at the end.
Yeah, and you're just like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I took you there.
Yeah.
we were there for a little while, but now I'm going to bring you back out.
Yeah. And that's what it does.
Well, I guess that's the whole book.
It is.
The
well, not quite.
The
There's way
illustrated,
more. There's
the illustrated
way more.
part.
Yeah. There is so much more.